All right. Well, hey, this is a real exciting time to spend some time with somebody. I have got with me as a guest Emily Hall, who is a lot of different things. She is a mom, and that's something that's a passion of hers. She is a real estate investor, and she's also a real estate professional with Hall Home Investors. So, Emily, great to have you here. How are you doing?
Awesome. I love talking about real estate, Scott. So thanks for having me on. I could sit here and just talk about real estate all day.
Awesome. Well, it's going to be great to visit with you a little bit. A little bit of context. I met Emily. We're part of a real estate investment association. We've been in this group, both of us, for a number of years. And that group of people has really helped, I know me individually and Emily and everybody in it really kind of up our game and learn a lot about investing. Emily's in Davis County, Utah. She is a real estate professional with Hall Home Investors. At the end, you'll be able to get her contact information because she's great as a real estate professional and she's got a whole lot of expertise as an investor. And Emily is over 10 properties. I think she told me 11 properties with another 4 in the pipeline. So she's an experienced investor, has done this many times. So great to spend some time with you, Emily. So Emily, just kind of kicking things off, a little bit of background. When did you buy your first investment property and how has that gone for you?
Oh, that was a good event in my life. Let me tell you. 2015, at the time I was a full-time mom with young kids, and I actually ended up buying a property across the street from where my mom lives, in West Jordan, Utah. And at the time, my husband was active duty military still, and we didn't think we would be sticking around in the area for more than 3 years. We'd lived overseas. We had lived in England and South Korea. And I don't know, I had the bug bit me. I'd read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad years ago, had a little nest egg when we got married from my first condo, and it just seemed the right time. And so we thought, well, if we're not going to be in the state for, forever, if we're going to have to move to another base, that at least, my mom and stepdad could keep an eye on it for us. So we learned about this one across the street through my stepdad that the owner had tried to sell before, and it, hadn't been successful. And so we talked to her and we worked out a deal, and it has been amazing. I mean, I kind of got lucky. I had done some research and learning and, learn on bigger pockets. But honestly, I feel like there was an amount of luck there. It's been amazing.
Wow, that's great. Your first one was like that. Did you do it mainly for convenience, that it was just close to you, it was easy to do? Or did you look at Utah and think like, this is going to be a good economy, a great place to invest long-term? What was the motivating factor?
Well, I wasn't that sophisticated. It was more, we didn't know where we'd end up. And it's actually not that close to me. It's almost an hour away. I do self-manage it, but it definitely helps to have relatives nearby that can help when we need it. But also it's a condo, and it's in a little gated community, and the HOA takes care of the outside. And I've learned to screen well, and I've had great tenants. I've only had 2 different sets of tenants the whole time. And honestly, having good tenants and a well-maintained property makes it pretty easy when you are managing, which is not always what you want to do, but when you can buy locally, having good tenants makes a big difference.
Absolutely. That's a great little nugget there you just shared, kind of right in the stream of a sentence. Having a good tenant that takes care of the property, pays you on time and maintains it. That's a night and day difference versus having a tenant that doesn't pay on time, trashes the property. That's kind of the horror story that a lot of people want to avoid. So that was a nice little nugget there. So let's fast forward from that. So that was your first one. Where did you go after that? And why did you go to where you purchased after that?
Well, our second property was also locally, in Davis County, Utah, where I live, kind of between Ogden and Salt Lake City. And I had gotten my real estate license by then, and we thought that that would help us buy more properties. So it took us, a few years to go from 1 to 2, because we kind of thought, how do you do this? How do you buy more properties? It just seems so overwhelming. With our first property, we were able to use savings. We were able to save up from when we lived overseas in the military. We'd get COLA, cost of living allowances, and it was harder to shop. So, we were able to save more. And then I had kind of a nest egg, again, thanks to real estate from my first property before I got married. When I sold that, we had that. So we had savings for our first property. We did put 20% down with a conventional loan, but we were kind of stumped. We're like, how do we move forward? And I think with that second one, we had been saving in retirement accounts. We had the TSP through the military, and we had Roth IRAs. So we pulled some money out of those. And we also used a HELOC on our primary. We weren't sure if that was really smart or not, but we just felt like, okay, we have to get something else. So we did that. We got the second one. It has been also amazing. We bought that as a new construction townhouse, and it was, a fair amount more than the first property, but this one's even closer. It's a little easier to manage. But also, I have to say, I hit like 2 home runs when you have nice properties with low maintenance and good tenants.
That's great. That's great. Not everybody comes out, first and second going so smoothly. All right, so let's roll it forward. You had 2 good experiences, ones that were kind of close by, and the first one was easy at a down payment. The next one you kind of had to be a little more creative. Where'd you go after that, and why did you do it?
Well, around this time, we bought that second one the fall of 2018, and then by that next summer, I had found the real estate investing group that we are both in, and I had started to learn about how you can buy properties that aren't local to you in other markets that can be more affordable and can have better price to rent ratios. And some people might think that's really crazy to buy properties that you've never seen. And actually, I've never seen ours that are out of state. But you know what? We kind of picked the house where we still live when we moved from South Korea to Utah without seeing it. So I guess I'd had a taste of that, just pictures and videos and that type of thing.
Sure.
And then I kind of learned, it opened my mind to new ways of accessing funds. Like, don't just, use a little bit of your Roth, but, get your TSP out, like pull that money out, and learning about harvesting equity. So my first 2 properties had appreciated, and I was able, and as well as our primary residence. And so one of my secrets, it's not really a secret, but this is how I get to buy more properties. It's not that we save 50% of our income to come up with a 20% down payment. Now that we had a couple of properties that were appreciating, we just started to pull the money out. I mean, we took out our retirement funds, we took everything out, so now I don't worry about when the stock market drops 40% in a year. Yeah, that's bad, but it doesn't affect me. But pulling the equity out, put that into new properties, then they go up in value, and it really starts a snowball effect. And that's how we've been able to buy more properties.
That's fascinating. And it all started by getting a couple of investments in a house, right? You had 3 assets there, a home, 2 investments. I think people are sometimes surprised that that's what happens with real estate, that it goes up. I know I was explaining to my daughters in high school how property values go up. She was like, well, I don't understand. How do you do this cash out refi, or, the equity harvesting, whatever you want to call it? And I said, well, the way the world works, you got this thing called the Fed, and they're pumping in money in the economy, and it creates inflation. And typically houses kind of keep up with inflation. And so as inflation goes up, the value goes up, and you can go in there and pull money out. But explaining that to somebody in high school who didn't even understand, she's like, well, where's that money come from? I'm like, well, that's an interesting story. It's all tied in with economics, but that's pretty interesting. So what market did you go into, and why'd you go there? What made you pick this particular market? What made it look appealing for investing?
Well, we first went into Memphis, Tennessee, and we kind of went gangbusters. We bought 6 through one provider there. We learned about turnkey real estate investing. So we're not handy, we don't flip, and we don't live in Memphis, but we could find companies that would buy, distressed properties, go in and fix up all the big things, the roof and the water heater and, paint, and take out the nasty carpet and put in some nice hard flooring, LVP or something. And you have a rehabbed house. And we bought properties from like 89,000 up to like 115, 116. And because they're such a lower price, we could buy more faster. So that helped. Then we also got one in Little Rock. We went into Pennsylvania, and I just kind of picked markets where I liked a property and I thought, I think it's growing. It's kind of considered one of these cash flow markets. And I have resources, other people that can help, kind of like brokers that can help scout out markets and properties. And so, my network that could bring me deals. And I said, I like that one. I like that one. But then after about 2 years of Memphis, it's been good. The properties went up much more than they normally would. But I also had some more headaches that I didn't love.
So talk about that a little bit. So you bought Memphis, and let me just clarify. So you're in Memphis, Little Rock, Utah, and Pennsylvania. So 4 states now?
We've also added in the last year, Georgia and Florida.
Wow, look at you. 6 states. That is what I call a well-diversified portfolio.
That might be too diversified. I have to restrict myself if I see other things coming in Alabama or Missouri. I'm like, no, I'm already in too many states. It gets complicated.
It does. I was on with somebody today, a provider, and they really wanted me to look at Baltimore, and I'm in 10 states, and I'm like, I can't do it. I just it's not efficient anymore. At a certain point, I think being in 2 to 4 markets is probably all you need. 3 to 4 maybe being a sweet spot. But I've been right where you're at. You see something, you're like, well, that looks like a good deal. All right, I'll get it. And there's something to be said. Probably over time, being in a bunch of markets means as one economy performs well, you get the benefit, and vice versa. But so talk a little bit about your experience. You got in, you bought 6 in the Memphis market. How did that go? And from when you first bought them to maybe making some changes, what happened? And then maybe what sort of changes did you look to make? Where was kind of your learning experience along the way?
Well, at first I thought, oh, this is amazing. I can buy these properties that cost, way less than my local market, where the median home price now is, over 500,000. So I just thought this was going to be the best thing since sliced bread. But people didn't stay. Like, my tenants would only stay on average a year. And I actually had 2-year leases, but they were leaving. And I quickly realized that it takes longer when you're with property management. Of course, you need them when you're at a state, and they're great. They're part of the business, but it's a different model. When I have a vacancy in my local properties, I get someone lined up, and I have like 2 or 3 days to get the carpets cleaned. And, I just do it really fast. So I have like no vacancy, and they're, nicer, newer properties, and the tenants take care of them. And I had like almost no cost to turn them over. And when you're out of state with the different demographic, I thought that they were kind of solid working class neighborhoods. I don't know, maybe they're lower, more in the C scale on the ABCD, property class rating, because just people weren't staying. They would break the lease, and then a big cost is that they insist on painting the whole house every time. And I didn't lay eyes on it to be able to say, you don't need to paint this. Although I did see some pictures, and some of them are pretty scraped up. So it's different. It's a different market, kind of, I guess, different tenant expectations. And I realized that the costs were very high. And so if someone only stays a year, it wipes out all of your cash flow for that year, and maybe then some, depending on, how bad it was. And then we had COVID and eviction moratoriums. We actually had to go through like 4 evictions in like less than a year, which is no
Wow.
fun for us. Or, we tried to work with the tenants, the property managers tried to work with them, but one of them was dealing drugs and the cops said, you have to get him.
Wow. That's a pretty high percentage, having 4 in a year. I don't, with COVID, I was lucky. I didn't have any evictions. I mean, I had a couple of people that were a little late and they got relief. And I still actually, believe it or not, I've got quite a few assets where people are still getting the excess funds. They're still getting government funds to pay for it. So I am a little nervous when those funds dry up, which it's inevitable they will. I might face some, but that's pretty interesting. You and I are talking right before we connected here about just the cost of those turnovers, right? You got the person leaving, and then the paint and all the fix up, you almost have a double whammy. You got a month or two without rent. And then you also have the fix-up costs, whether it's paint. Sometimes it's a little bit more. I mean, I've had floors I've had to fix, and a little bit more significant. So that's that's an important lesson, is just to try and minimize tenant turn wherever you can. I know for me, I always advocate for people, don't bump up the full rent. If you have a good tenant and the property manager goes, oh, we can increase it 100, I might just go up $25 because I'd rather keep that tenant and not have all those costs. So what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. I learned that too. I'm like, don't push for the highest rent. Sometimes your property can sit vacant longer if it is vacant. But yeah, if you have someone in there, I would much prefer to keep it to a lower bump, because like you said, I've learned it costs thousands when they leave. And you didn't mention that the cost to place the new tenant can be as low as maybe a half month's rent, but I find more it's like 80% to a full month's rent. So, which leads me to another thing, is that if you come in thinking cash flow is going to be what some, spreadsheet tells you, that's like the max possible cash flow. Cash flow is actually a smaller piece, maybe the smallest piece of the puzzle of how real estate grows wealth, at least in the first couple of years. So don't get too caught up on that, because there are other ways that it's growing. And my favorite one is appreciation and tax benefits.
Yeah, everybody loves those. Those are great. And then what's the other? There's one more thing that real estate does. So you got tax benefits, appreciation, cash flow, and what's the last one?
Well, hedge against inflation.
Yep. Yeah. And
As well
we've
as your
got
mortgage pay down too, through the
mortgage pay down and leverage. And there's one that not a lot of people talk about, but I think right now, when we're in an inflationary environment where inflation's going up, there's a really cool thing that happens where your debt becomes less expensive over time. So if I have, let's say, inflation's going to affect me 10%, just to make a number. So if I put 100 grand in the bank, a year later it's worth 90. Well, the same thing happens to our mortgages. So using leverage, wise business leverage, not consumer debt, but asset-backed leverage, our debt becomes, in an inflationary environment, becomes less and less expensive. And so in a kind of an interesting way, we get the upswing from property values going up, the appreciation, we get the rent bumps, and at the same time, when we use leverage, we get our debt being devalued. So, those are some really powerful economic forces over time.
Sure.
I think it's great you shared about the cash flow. So many people get in thinking, oh, I'm going to buy a few houses, buy 3 houses, and that's $1,000 extra a month. And if I do 6, it's $2,000. And it doesn't, over time, I think that works out, but it takes a little while to be in the game and to maybe have some rent increases to see that. So Emily, you had some of those experiences. What have you kind of, in your mind, what have you kind of moved towards in terms of looking at future properties and where you want to grow your portfolio? What do you want to buy? What types of properties? Are they going to be A, B, or C? What type of bedrooms do you like? Do you like HOAs? Like explain a little bit of your strategy as it's evolved.
Well, since I had my, my first properties were, nicer, newer, and one of them was brand new when we bought it, I kind of shifted after going through some of those pains in Memphis. And I decided, you know what? I like these newer properties. And, my network was bringing me offers of new construction, where you have to be patient. You would put a deposit down, like 10% down, but then you have to wait a while. But then your price was fixed, and then you close and you have a new, you have a new property with the hope that you're going to attract, a higher quality tenant, and they're going to want to stay longer because it's brand new and it's, modern finishes and less maintenance, all those things. So I've really shifted. I haven't bought any more rehabbed properties. I don't know, since maybe early 2020. So we've just focused on newer ones. Now I've had to be patient, and honestly, it's slowed me down. Like my count of properties could definitely be higher if I had continued just going after properties. They used to be as low as like 90,000. Now it seems like the lowest ones you can find are like maybe 130 in these, higher cash flow markets. But I think my patience is going to pay off.
Yeah. So it almost sounds like we were looking at more of moving a little bit more towards higher quality and maybe a little less quantity, because you're finding that's better with are you finding that's better with the tenants? And I'm guessing, you can tell me, do you think those newer properties are going to appreciate better over time versus maybe older properties in a market like Memphis? What do you envision?
Yes, that's my secret. That's one of the things I love about doing this is that appreciation. Like we recently closed on a new construction in Florida, and it actually wasn't through like a build to invest. It was, I don't know, I kind of stumbled upon it and something had just fallen through, and this was in the heyday of everything selling in 30 seconds. And so I jumped on this one and had to wait, a while for it to get built, but it was actually not my normal buy box. It was a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage on a half acre. Can you believe that? In Southwest
That's a big property.
Florida.
That's real big.
It is. And if you're looking at cash on cash, I don't even want to say what that is because it's pretty low compared to maybe a nice round target of 10%. And yet it appraised for over like 38,000 over my purchase price.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
7 or 8 months, I made that equity. And it's just on paper, it's not realized. And it could go down, up or down, but like this property in 10 years, what is it going to be worth? How happy am I going to be that I had this nice property, that went up all this compared to, maybe a smaller, older house in one of the more cash flow type markets.
Right. Now, what part of Florida? What city did you get in? Where?
East of Fort Myers in Lehigh Acres.
Okay. All right. I've got one in just one, but I want to get 4 more. I'm over in Jacksonville. So, the Florida market, there are a few states that have a lot of real positive variables. Florida's one. Texas has a big influx. Tennessee does. The state you live in, Utah, a lot of people are going there, Idaho. There's just a handful of states where people are relocating, and property values tend to follow job growth and population growth. If jobs are being created, the population's growing, the properties are going to appreciate long term. So I think Florida, personally, it's almost, not that you can't evaluate your individual purchase, but it's a good market overall because it's got that 0 state tax, and a lot of people are relocating there. So we certainly see that a lot.
Yeah, well, my next 4 that we have under contract, which we should be closing on in the next couple of months, and I've had to be really patient. One of them is actually a duplex, and they didn't break ground for like 2 years, but that one is actually going to have both appreciation and incredible cash flow because it's gone up while I've been waiting, and the price did go up some too. But I love Florida. Actually, I grew up as a teenager in Florida. I have roots there. I have some family there still. So yeah. I like Florida.
Where are the 4 that you're getting now? What state are they in?
Florida.
They're all in Florida.
Yep.
Okay. So you're comfortable doing remote management in Florida because you said you kind of like the ones that you got local work well, where you are a little more involved and you can turn them faster. Do you have a good manager in Florida that you feel really confident in?
Yeah, they're actually all going to be with I'll have like 3 different managers because that's kind of the management that comes with the deal.
Right.
But yeah, the first one I've been working with is good. Some of them you do your best and you hope that they're going to be good, but you can only know so much. And it's also possible to change. I have fired property management before. In fact, I did that in Memphis. And some of my problems did go away by switching property management.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think the longer we're around doing this, I've moved several times, different managers, and sometimes you just need to make a call and say, this isn't the fit that you thought it was. You really want somebody that really is attentive to your assets. I mean, to me, that's so important. Somebody that's really following up and responsive to me if I have questions. I like managers that'll adjust. If I've got a vacancy and I want to do a little move-in special, I want a manager that's going to flex with me. It's my asset, right? And I want to get it filled as quick as I can with the right tenant. So, hey, Emily, what you mentioned the buy box concept. What would be your ideal buy box in terms of type of property, ABC, bedrooms, baths? What's your sweet spot where you go, that's a slam dunk, exactly what I'm looking for?
oh, well, I'm kind of flexible on that. I used to think I should only buy 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, or like 1.5 bathrooms. But I kind of like having sort of a variety. I've like in Memphis, I learned that the size of the property, square footage, of course, determines insurance costs, but also the cost for painting. Like I said, that they always insist on painting the whole place. And so like I started getting some, 2-bedroom, 1-bath. So I have a couple of those. And so like the last make ready was only 3,000 instead of 4,000 or 5,000 because it was smaller. But like I said, I also bought a 4-bedroom and I do have a duplex coming. Those are each 2-bedroom, 1-bath. So okay. I'm not perfectly set. It doesn't have to be a certain thing. I have had good experience with townhouses in an HOA. And I know some people would say, no, don't do that. And yeah, certainly you can get in trouble, but if I don't know, if you know their rules and you can follow them, to me, I like not having to pay for new fences. Like I had a couple of blow over in Memphis and the costs were that you're going to charge me what for that much fence. So it's nice to not worry about those. So maybe that's partly why I love my local ones. They both, are HOA and I don't have to worry about mowing the lawns or the roof or anything like that.
Yeah, no, that's certainly an advantage. It's a little less hassle when you have that HOA. There's a price to it, but you're right, from a convenience standpoint, it balances out. So looking at all your investments and the ones you got coming online, how much time do you put in an average a month, with your investments? How many hours does it take on an average month? I realize it fluctuates, but what does it look like for you?
Well, because I strive to be a real estate professional, I do, spend at least 60 hours a month with all of my different endeavors. And it's not necessary, but I also, for tax purposes, I'm able to write that off. So that works for me, but it's also, for me, it's fun. I love this stuff. It's so rewarding, even though there are hard times. You can go through the abyss. You have 4 evictions in a year and you're like, why am I doing this? Even with those hard times, I would do it all again in a heartbeat. It's just so rewarding as I see our financial future get stronger. I mean, I would love to get to the point where, we're job optional. We're still working towards that, but it feels so good to have savings and to have assets. Like in the worst case scenario, or we could sell one if we need it, and all that would generate. So I do this because it's work. I'm self-employed and I work in real estate, but I love it. Like I said at the beginning, like I could sit here and talk about this all day.
I can tell when you say I love it, you got a big smile and you're all happy and animated. I know what you're talking about. I love it too. Man, my kids give me a hard time. Like, Dad, You spend, I go, it's just fun, it's because you do your best analysis, you give it your best shot. Sometimes it works out fabulously. Sometimes you got to tweak things a little bit, but we're in the driver's seat as investors, right? There are assets, and it's kind of fun doing it. I love it. I mean, honestly, my kids are like, Dad, when are you gonna I'm like, I'm gonna still keep going. It's fun. It's an investment, and it's yeah, I don't know. I get what that's like. So a lot of time involved, but it's unique. And for those of you that maybe don't know the term, real estate professional is a whole nother topic, but it's where you're so actively involved that you're able to take the time, and then you're able to use income from other sources and take business losses. It's got some great tax advantages, but just for the record, it's got some levels you got to hit as a real estate agent. That makes it much easier to be a real estate professional. So we won't go down the whole road. It's kind of tricky. I know a lot of people want to know, how do you do that? And there's a little bit more involved. So just a little caveat, talk to your tax advisor to see if you can qualify for being a real estate professional. There's some different criteria, and you really have to check the box and meet it strictly. So so let me ask you, so you got started, it was not easy, but you had a little savings from the military. The second one, you kind of did it, and now you've been doing equity harvesting and growing. But what would be, for a brand new investor who doesn't have a first property, what would be some nuggets of wisdom you'd share that you think would be really important to help out a first-time investor?
Well, I love helping first-time investors. I get asked a lot of questions, and I love sharing, because maybe it's partly because some of my own family don't get it. It's sort of the matrix thing. Once your eyes are open to just how wonderful real estate investing can be, you just see things differently. And a lot of people, they just don't get it. So I love sharing and talking about it. But what should they know to get started? You do need to be at a certain level of financial security, if you're just barely scraping by, unless you're going to get, I don't know, unless you're going to learn how to house hack and flip and do some of that crazy stuff, then you need to have a certain level of stability. Buying the investment properties, it's typically 20% down, and that can seem overwhelming at first, but if you've been working for a while, do you have money in retirement? Scott and I know, share the belief that we don't want to put our money in 401ks. We kind of think they're misleading. People think that they're going to be better than they are. I would rather have full control of my money and not get taxed on it when I'm, retired and need that income. But you can explore ways to finance properties. Maybe you can partner with someone to come up with that, or, house hacking is a common term, bigger pockets and all that. You can learn how, maybe I can just come up with 3.5% down to buy a primary residence, and then I can have roommates, or maybe if you have a family and you don't want to do that, you just live there for a few years, I think at least 2, and then you can move on and keep it as a rental, and you only put 3.5% down. So right. I know a big hurdle is coming up with the financing.
Yep, no, it is. So I want to pull the string on a couple of things you said, just going off on the tangent with kind of qualified accounts. So 401ks, IRAs, 403s, all that. What we've learned is that when you look at the result of that, it doesn't get the objective that people want. You're going to still have to pay. You're just kicking the tax can down the road. Later on, you have to pay it. And what's interesting is the government studies show something like 95% of Americans are still broke at age 65, meaning putting a little money here and there into a qualified plan and praying and hoping the Wall Street, is doing well. And that whole yo-yo, it doesn't really work out. And so, in the investment group that Emily and I are involved with, called Cash Flow Tactics, great group. Can't recommend them highly enough. If you're looking for more education, check out Cash Flow Tactics. They're just awesome people and awesome education, but they've really kind of pulled back the curtain a little bit to show it doesn't work with a qualified account. buying your own real estate gives you control. And not only that, you get all these variables that work for your advantage, right? They work for you. Inflation works for you. Leverage works for you. Cash flow, all these things. And what you've kind of mentioned a few times, appreciation long term, it's kind of cool. I mean, I would tell you my portfolio from when I started, I mean, my net worth more than double when I started, much more. And it makes a big difference. And then the house hacking is a great thing, just to kind of, expand that. You can do house hack with Airbnb in your house. You can buy a duplex, rent out a unit. You can have, I'm here in my basement of my house in Colorado. You can rent out a basement and live upstairs. So there are a lot of different ways to take what we consider a primary residence, get some rental income to begin building up savings. So great point there. Let me ask you this, and just kind of wrapping up, I want to respect your time, but what would be the one or two biggest mistakes looking back that you made for you as an investor? And then if you were to give just kind of your number one most important thing for a new investor to do, how would you wrap up?
I think the biggest mistake that anyone can make in real estate is not starting sooner. I mean, just think how much further along I could have been if I had started sooner. I mean, for us, when we were living overseas, I didn't think I could buy at the time. Actually, now I know that I could. I buy in other states where I've never even laid eyes on the properties in person. But your journey, things happen when you're ready. Mistake wise, I mean, I've learned some good lessons. I actually don't feel that I really made big mistakes. Things happen. It's like life. You just be as prepared as you can. You learn as much as you can. And I love learning. I listen to thousands of podcasts, and in the cash flow tactics that we're in, I like to soak up as much as I can. And that just helps you be prepared. You just kind of have to know that stuff's going to happen. There's going to be junky stuff that happens, even as prepared as you think you are. And you need to have reserves, keep reserves. All of us during COVID, we were kind of getting nervous, like, oh, it's the worst case scenario. But, I wasn't too worried, even when we had, some of those rough times, because we did have reserves, and that's a huge comfort. And I'm actually really grateful for my downs, the ups and the downs, because I just feel like I've learned so much, and it just makes me appreciate it all even more. So yeah,
that's cool. It's a great perspective you have there. I mean, I've had a lot of learning experiences too, some a little more painful than others, but by far the benefits way outweigh by multitudes some of the challenges along the way. So, what I want to do is, kind of wrap it up. And, Emily, I did mention at the beginning, she's in Utah. So she is a real estate investor. So she's got a lot of properties, a lot of experience. She's a committed mom, and she's also a real estate professional and an expert in the local market. So, Emily, let people know if they're in Utah, or if they've got family in Utah or friends in Utah. I imagine you would welcome the opportunity to work with more people in your marketplace. So tell people how they can get a hold of you, where they can track you down on the web. How do they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love working with investors. I also work with, regular buyers and sellers here in, Ogden, Salt Lake area. I'm at hallhomeinvestors.com. And on Facebook, facebook.com/Emily Hall Real Estate. And I get asked questions a lot, and I'm starting to put together some content and resources for beginners. I feel like I like talking with beginners. I like talking with other moms. Maybe they don't realize what is at their fingertips and how they can use retirement or equity in their home, and they can, instead of just hoping that a 401k is going to work for them. I would love to see, all my friends and family have at least 5 rental properties. I think their future would be so much more stable, and it would just make me feel better for people that I care about. And so that's kind of my message. I'd love to see others that feel like this speaks to them, that they're hearing that call of real estate and they don't want to just hope that Social Security or a 401k is going to work for them, then yeah, I'd love to offer some advice and offer some coaching. So allhomeinvestors.com.
Allhomeinvestors.com. Emily, that's great perspective. And it's kind of cool how you just happen to, I say 5 is a sweet spot. I mean, if people had 5 single family homes, they're light years ahead of almost anybody else in terms of their financial security and future. So, and I'm starting to see you on social media more. I'm seeing you posting stuff and talking to different people. So I have no doubt if you want to find Emily Hull and Hull Home Investors on social media, you're going to see more and more content over time. So check it out. Thanks for taking some time to visit together. It's a pleasure to have somebody who's really growing and scaling and, took a gut punch or two and then kept moving forward, and you're reaping the benefits of that. So it's just fun to see you continue to grow and scale and what it's doing. And it's going to be an awesome future you guys are building there by doing all these investments. So Emily, thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Scott. And you have given back so much to the community that we're in, and you have helped me personally. I look up to you. I want to get to your level someday. So you're awesome. Thanks for all that you share and do.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.